ministry should never just be confined to a sanctuary. It's got to get out where the people are in the streets.
I want you to describe Pastor Haynes for me. Who is Pastor Haynes?
Wow. Let me see. Pastor Haynes is a lover of life, God, people, my family, justice, and so the consistent adjective is going to always have to do with love, which is going to make me passionate, love, which is going to make me determined to fight for what's right when I see wrong. And then I guess the last piece is I feel a strong sense of call. I'm not here by accident, and I don't think anyone is here by accident. We all have an assignment we've been sent to bring to pass, to perform, to live up to, and I'm real clear why I'm here, to quote Jay-Z. I have an assignment to make this world a better place, an assignment to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. I've been on the side of what it means to feel handcuffed by helplessness because of some authoritative figure that just chooses to do me wrong, and to sit there helpless while I'm being kicked by a teacher in middle school and then welling up crying because I can't defend myself. I've never forgotten that moment, and I always wondered, why didn't someone speak up for me? And on top of that, I've been in a position where someone did me dirty, someone saw me being mistreated, and they immediately spoke up, fought for me.
So you know how that feels.
That's an amazing feeling.
I want to go back to the situation that happened in middle school.
Yeah.
Because some may not know that you were born in Dallas, right? And then you moved to Cali.
Right.
I want to talk about that transition. One, what led to that transition and y'all getting up out of here, okay? And what got you to Cali.
Right.
And then really kind of the situations that happened in your life, right? Some things that happened when you were younger that really kind of changed the trajectory of what you wanted to do.
Oh, yeah. So my mother and father were students at Bishop College, now defunct, but never dead. And my mother graduates, and they just decide we do not want our family raised in a city so racist. We want to go where there's opportunity and where your pigmentation is not going to define where you can go and what you can become. Because again, you're talking about early 60s, and it's literally legal to be racist at that time. And so I'm 2 years old and we moved to San Francisco. And so it's real ironic that both experiences I had, one where I was helpless to a racist teacher, the other where I was defended, both took place in San Francisco. I love the city without question, just like I love Dallas. But it hit me that in a country that was born in the sin of a genocidal takeover shaped by anti-black white supremacy, you really can't avoid that experience. And so having the experience, and then it's the 60s. I didn't know this until much later because this is my grandfather and I loved him as a grandfather. He's out here on the front lines fighting the good fight. And once I found out what he was about, and he named himself Frederick Douglass Haynes. He was orphaned at the age of 4. His sister raises him, his aunt raised him, And while he's in school, his first day of school, he's 9 years old, and the teacher says, okay, what's your name? Well, the only name he's been called by his sister and aunt is Bubba, because he's a little kid. Bubba, come here. Bubba, do this. But his sister and aunt had been reading to him My Bondage and My Freedom by Frederick Douglass. He gets to school, and the teacher says, what's your name? And he says, on the spot, Frederick Douglass Haynes. That story still does something for me because he's 9 years old, and he teaches us you don't just discover who you are, you decide who you are. He decided at that moment that he was going to live a life reflective of that kind of name. And so he becomes the first African American to run for county supervisor. It's a county commissioner here in Dallas. He invites to the pulpit of Third Baptist Martin Luther King Jr., W.E.B. Du Bois, Josephine Baker, Paul Robeson, all came to Third Baptist during his tenure. And I've been reading so much in terms of what he did for civil rights. I went to the California Historical Society. My daughter, Albany, took me there. And letters exchanged between him and Eisenhower, President Eisenhower, between my grandfather and Martin Luther King Jr. King thanking him for his support at the March on Washington, thanking him for his monetary support. I don't discover that till later, but it's in my DNA. And so when you ask me about, okay, what put me on this path, on this trajectory, I'm real convinced that when my grandfather said, my name is Frederick Douglass Haynes, and then named his son Frederick Douglass Haynes Jr., who named his son Frederick Douglass Haynes III, it's almost a setup for a date with destiny where I'm out here trying to fight for justice.
I want to go back to that story. You say your grandfather decided on the spot, this is my name and this is what I'm going to say in this moment. I think one of the reasons, I know one of the reasons that a lot of people appreciate your leadership and what you stand for is because you do it out loud. There's no hiding what you stand for. How do you consciously daily make that decision to be out loud? Because people can kind of, I may say something, I might not say something. You are in front of it. How do you make that decision daily to stand out loud for what you believe in?
Well, number one, I feel strongly called to do what I'm doing. This is not something I just took up and decided to do. I feel strongly it was decided for me by a higher power. And I believe strongly that God is up to something in my life, as God is up to something in your life, in the lives of all of God's creation. And so, number one, I can't deny whose I am, why I am, and who I am. That's number one. Number two, and this is very important, I got to be loud because so many are suffering in silence. Because intentionally, I'm in the streets. I'm accessible to people. I hear stories. I hear pain. I hear what people deal with on a day-to-day basis. I've got to be a good steward of that. I cannot hear someone sharing their experience of suffering from this injustice, that injustice, and I not respond to that. Number three, God has always been good enough to put in my life people that keep me going, who inspire me because they are unapologetic, unashamed, living that thing out loud, and I'll say it, and I say it because I've said it behind your back. You inspire me. I follow Tashara Parker on Instagram, and I'm a cousin, even though you may not know it, but you are free, and you live out loud who you are, and as far as I'm concerned, that's when we say free at last. That means I'm free to be me, and when I'm free to be me, regardless of barriers, regardless of what other people want to say and what other people want to do, that's what life at its best is all about. If we are to truly live a life that is unencumbered, pursuing life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, as America says we are to do, then Tashara Parker embodies that for me. And so seeing you, seeing persons who have inspired me around me. And let me say this, it's not just persons who are living now. I was blessed tremendously by a high school teacher, Homer L. Davis, who made me read. And I can literally take a trip to another era and see another free person living out loud. And my thing is, they did it then, I've got to do it now. I can read a Toni Morrison, and through her, fiction, I come upon freedom and truth. And so it's all around us. Yeah. I mean, you have inspiring persons who are living out loud, ain't no shame in their game, doing the doggone thing, and as a consequence, making life better for other people.
I want to dig in right there, making life better for other people. I know how you feel about black folks, and I see and watch everything that you do, and it's one of the reasons I came to know who you were just in the community moving here to Dallas from Tyler. You don't just stand up for us, though. You standing up for a lot of people. I saw you on the picket lines with the actors and the actresses when all that was carrying on. Right. So tell me about your social justice for people who may not necessarily look like us.
Right. Vincent Harding, who was a partner with Martin Luther King Jr., raises this question that, for me, sums it up. He says, do you want to be free, or do you want everyone to be free? I want everyone to be free. Not just black people. Of course, that's going to be a priority because of the fact I'm black, and in too many instances, black life does not matter. It's been under assault from the birth of this nation. But I don't stop there, because again, when love is your fueling force, love says, okay, God created all of us. If there's anyone who is hurting, if there is anyone who is being denied the opportunity to fulfill their possibility because of how God made them, oh yeah, you got an ally in me. Not just an ally, but an advocate. Yeah. And I'm gonna fight for you because it ain't right. It's dead wrong. And if this country is to be what it claims it wants to be, live up to its promise, Martin King said at the end of his life in his last speech, be true to what you said on paper. If this country is to be true to what it said on paper, then everybody should have both voice, opportunity, possibility to live up to their potential and not be held back by something they have no control over. That's crazy that I'm going to actually discriminate against you over something over which you didn't choose, you had no control, how you were created, how you were born, be it gender, be it who you love, be it how you look. That's insane to me. And so again, if I see anyone being mistreated because of how God created them, that insults the God I serve, and that's an insult to my brother and sister, or however they self-define. And I want to be there for them, letting them know, you ain't in this thing by yourself. I love you. God loves you.
How did you feel knowing, and I know you know this already, but how did you feel knowing that you weren't in this thing by yourself when you had a caravan of folks pull up here when another caravan had pulled up thinking that they were going to do something because that Black Lives Matter sign is hanging outside of the church? How did that feel for you to see that support and witness it? How did that feel for you?
Let me tell you, one of the greatest days of my life, if I ever sit down and write an autobiography, that will be a huge defining moment, because on the one hand, I was offended, insulted. I'm on vacation, and I get word from a member, Pastor, it's a lot of Trump supporters and racist white supremacists in the parking lot. I'm saying, you're kidding me. Immediately, the police chief calls me right after that, says, is this true? And I said, I'm going to go find out. And she says, well, we're going to beat you there. I said, you better, because, I got another spirit rising up in me. I'm trying to be Martin, but Malcolm is rising up. You got to pray for me. And so I get here, true enough, it's happening, but then the community showed up. And when the community showed up, one brother said this to me, and it got me. He said, you're my pastor. Now, I've never seen him at church. He said, you're my pastor. He said, I don't go to church, but you my pastor. Oh. And I may not get here, but you my pastor because you fight for us. And he said, I'm going to be your security. And I got some people around. He showed me what he was packing. Yeah. He said, and we're going to guard this church. This will never happen because he said, you are about the people. You are about the community. And that was worth it all. Mm-hmm. You know, because there are times you feel like you're out here and you hear the negative stuff. You know, I hear the negative about me all the time. But to have someone from the streets make that statement, you know, I mean, the Jesus I served was in the streets with the street people hanging in the hood. You know, Nazareth, straight out of Nazareth, NWA would rock with him. And so when the streets respond, because that's the streets came. And when the streets came and the streets said, hey, we're with you, we're going to guard this church, everything we've tried to do that day, no award could have made me feel better than the reward of the streets saying, you my pastor.
Yeah, yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. It just brought back those memories, and I was like, wow, you've been there for a lot of people, right? So to see that all these people are going to show up for you, I thought that was really a defining moment since I've been here in Dallas anyway. Let's talk about your call to ministry. We talked about the assignment that's been placed on you. You've seen this church go through a lot of changes. Right. What is this, the third location? Speaking to how you've grown this ministry and this church, why do you think that is possible?
God. I mean, I'm blessed. You know, God just has done so much that there are times when I can't explain, you know, growth, quote unquote success. I prefer to call it, I hope, fruitfulness, because you plant seeds. But even when you plant seeds, you don't know. I mean, some of that is out of your control. And so to see the seeds bear fruit, I can't just say, oh, Freddie Haynes did that. No, God has raised up good people in my life who have poured into me, believed in me, saw something in me when I didn't see it in myself. So I keep going back to God, because it's like God basically said, for whatever reason, I'm going to do something special through you. I'm going to bless you. And so when I look at what happens, I mean, when I show up here on Sundays and see all the people, I'm like, I can't believe this. Right. This is still shocking.
When did you not believe in yourself? Because we see Freddie Haynes now, and all of what you stand for and all of what you believe in, and we rocking with it.
Yeah.
When did you not believe in yourself? Because there are a lot of people who see you as this huge figure, but they don't know the Freddie Haynes who did not believe in himself at one point.
Right.
Can you tell me about that time?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So my dad died my first day of high school. Very first day he died. And my dad was my hero. He was everything. I knew he was a pastor of a church, active in the community, but that was really nothing to me. He was my daddy. I'm 14 years old, and then he's gone. And so after the funeral, which is September 7th, 1975, September 8th, I go to school for my first day. When I get to school, I have to take a test in this English composition class. And I failed it. It's the day after the funeral. And I'm, you know, mental health is not a big thing back then, right. But of course my mental health was non-existent. I was mentally in a coma, if anything, trying to figure out what happened. My world has been flipped upside down. And I took the test. September 9th, we get the papers back, and the teacher, Miss Anderson, I won't forget her, she says, come here, Mr. Haynes, gives me my paper, marked in red, and says, you don't have the skills to be in this class. I'm going to send you to a remedial writing class. At that moment, everything fell apart for me. It was like, I'm not smart. I've just been humiliated in front of my peers, you know, because she did this in front of the class. And my dad just died. And so I literally was sent from that class. I exited the school, exited the door, the class, I should say. And to Shara, I said, what's the point? What's the point? The day they announced my dad had died, I tried to take my life, and it didn't work. This day, I was like, okay, well, if you ain't gonna kill me, I'm just not gonna go to school because I don't have the skills, the mental aptitude to handle this based on what Miss Anderson said. And that moment was a part of a defining moment that I have fought for much of my life. You know, my daughter says that I love school because I'm working on my 4th degree. And I don't really love school. I'm trying to prove to Miss Anderson she was wrong. And a part of the reason I majored in English at Bishop was to prove Miss Anderson wrong. So a part of that is a continuous fight to say, Miss Anderson, you're wrong. Here's the other side of that story. I'm trying to leave school. Miss Homazelle Davis, your sorority sister, who founded Delta chapters in Utah, you know, bad sister. Homazelle Davis sees me leaving and she says, Frederick, where are you going? And so tears in my eyes, I said, Miss Davis, I can't cut it. Miss Anderson just told me, here, showed her the paper. She said, come here. And so she made me follow her back to her office. And so I said, Miss Davis, I just don't feel I can. She said, Frederick, your dad just died. I understand that. I said, but she just said I can't write. She said, no, no, no. It's not that you can't write, she can't teach. Oh. I'm going to put you in a class with someone who can teach. Frederick, you were destined to be somebody. I've heard you speak publicly. You're going to be the valedictorian of your class. You have it to do that. You'll be the first black in the history of Abraham Lincoln High School. You're going to be a leader amongst our people. And so I said, but Miss Davis, she just said I can't write. She said, I want you to do this for me. Are you going to listen to Miss Anderson, who can't teach, or Miss Davis, who believes in you? And I had that choice. And Tashara, here's the deal. If I'm honest, so many days of my life, is Miss Anderson speaking? Is she going to win today? Or is Miss Davis going to win today? And I'm always fighting to make sure Miss Davis wins so I can prove Miss Anderson wrong. I got to give you the end of the story. So Miss Davis says, you're going to be valedictorian? And so I said, yeah, I'm going to be first black valedictorian. And I began to walk like a valedictorian. I did my homework like a valedictorian. June 15th, 1978, I lead my class down the aisle of the auditorium there in San Francisco, and the faculty is seated left section, front row in alphabetical order. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Miss Anderson is right there on the edge, on the end, I'm sorry. I walk by Miss Anderson intentionally, look at her, and say, not bad for a brother who can't write.
Give me that.
And went to my seat. So I got to be honest, because your question is so profound for me, and I hadn't really thought about it until you said that. But my fight has been making sure Miss Anderson ain't right, because all of us have some Miss Andersons who did not believe in us, but we got to choose to believe in Miss Davis, who does believe in us.
What does a leader look like for you? Clearly not Miss Anderson. What does a leader look like for you? Because one of the things that I struggle with when it comes to people that are younger than me, from a standpoint of civic activism, is a lot of young folks don't want to get involved.
Yeah.
A lot of them say they won't vote, they don't want to go to city council, they don't want to learn about any of this whole process, but they don't realize the impact that it has on their life.
Yeah.
So when it comes to all the work that you've put in and all the work that you're doing daily, what does a leader or someone look like who is civically involved in the process and understanding of what's happening in the world?
Yeah, I have this theory I'm working on, and it's a result of studying leadership, especially in the context you're referencing. For me, leadership starts with serving people. If you're not about people, if you're not driven by, called to a sense of, I want people to feel impacted. I want people to feel heard, served. If it ain't about people, what you here for? You know, and so it has to begin with that. Do you really want to serve the people? Number two, after you serve people or while you're serving people, I think it's important to realize that leadership solves problems. Duh. I mean, you're in a position of responsibility to solve problems. Martin Luther King Jr. raised the question, are you going to be a thermostat or a thermometer? Thermostats solve the problem in the climate. If it's too cold, a thermostat solves the problem by releasing heat. If it's too hot, it releases AC. We're to solve problems. We're to solve problems as we serve people and not see people as problems. And that's so important, because if you're not careful, people can bring their problems, and before you know it, they become the problem. No, they're not the problem. It's a problem that birthed their pain. And so solving problems, serving people, and then, you know, and I'm going preaching right now, it's seeing what's possible. Because it's not just solving a problem. Anybody can say, okay, the problem is this, and then you move to solve it, that's good. But what are the possibilities beyond the problem? What do we see that, I mean, whatever, when I hear all the I have a dream around King's birthday, whatever else he was doing, he was seeing what was possible while working to solve problems as he was serving people. And so I think it's very important that we see what is possible. I love what your generation is saying in terms of we got to reimagine stuff. That when that came out a few years ago, I just grabbed it, because what else are we here for but to reimagine what life should be, what life could be? If you lose the power to imagine, then your life becomes what? Status quo. It becomes a merry-go-round of sameness, and you never can not only make life better for yourself, you can't make life better for others, but when you have the possibility of imagining, I imagine a world where everyone has access to health care. I imagine a world where our criminal justice system is not about punishment as much as it is about rehabilitating lives that have been broken, because you never know what brought a person to become where they are. I imagine a world where if someone has a dream of a business, that is facilitated by opportunities, doors that open for them. And before you know it, what? They solve problems that may change the world and transform the trajectory, but they can't do it if they have doors that are always telling them what they can and what they cannot do. And so we've got to imagine. One of the things that is just really in my heart right now is the stats keep coming out about the mortality rate for black women when it comes to childbirth. That's evil. There's nothing about that is good. That's evil. In the richest country in the world, the mortality rate, the maternal mortality rate of black women is like that of so-called third world countries. What's up with that? That's systemic. That's problematic. Someone has to imagine. We can solve the problem, but imagine, what does maternal health care for black women look like, where black women going into childbirth don't fear it's a death sentence. there's something about our system that's got to be fixed, but you got to have imagination to do that. And then the last thing I'll say is this: in leadership, you got to strategize for power, because we don't have a Crown Act unless there's a strategy, unless there's mobilizing. We don't have the Civil Rights Bill, the Voting Rights Bill. We don't have the Housing Bill unless somebody is working behind the scenes to bring about the kind of possibility that says, okay, this is what is right and this is what must take place. So for me, when I think about leadership, serve people, it's got to be about the people. You got to love people, solve problems, because you're not going to be a leader and not solve problems if you're a real leader. And then again, strategizing for power and making sure at the same time that we, do what we can to make the world better.
I want to flip that strategizing for power on its head.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of strategies happening behind the scenes right now as it relates to people not being educated on certain parts of history.
Right.
So when you talk about strategy, what does that look like? Why do you think it's so important that certain parts of history are being left out of the conversation?
Well, the sad reality is that Black history, and I'll just go there, becomes problematic because it counters a narrative that is really a myth that too much of education has been built on. So the chopping of the cherry tree, never telling a lie, and all of a sudden Black people show up here on these shores singing "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot." It's just not telling the truth about our history. Here's what we're missing, and that is America, again, born in a genocidal takeover. Let's be real, that there was a determined genocide of native peoples. America kidnapped, stole people from the shores of Mother Africa, and then built the wealth of this country on their backs. As Angela Rice says, we built this joint for free. And so all of that takes place while America issues a covenant through its Constitution of what it was aspiring to be. It wasn't that at the beginning. Our founding fathers acknowledged that. And many had problems with it, and they were torn. I'm not going to vilify all of them. Because, and parenthetically, that's a point. You ain't got to vilify people in order to tell the truth and bring about the possibility that we want. And so here you see the country born in a way, and anyone with sense is saying, okay, there's a birth defect there. Anyone with sense is saying there's an original sin there. The question is, if we had a birth defect, what do? You do what you can to correct the defect. America, at her best, has worked to correct the defect. Moving now into this season of Gore Vidal's, what does he call it? The United States of Amnesia. Moving into that is dangerous because you're ignoring the defect at the expense of the health, not just of Black people, but the whole country. The whole country suffers. Here's what blows my mind. 64 Civil Rights Act, 65 Voting Rights Act, they targeted Black people, but the whole country benefited from it. Because as a result of the 65 Voting Rights Act, for the first time, this country inched closer than it ever had been to becoming a true democracy. So it's like, whenever you help those, Reverend Jesse Jackson said this, and it's just a brilliant statement. Reverend Jackson, when some said, we want a rising tide to lift all boats, Reverend Jackson clapped back, but what about the boat stuck at the bottom? If you don't deal with the boat stuck at the bottom, then the sad reality is some are still drowning. And if some are still drowning, none of us are safe. Martin King Jr. kept trying to say, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We don't have justice educationally if we're lying about our history. But when we tell the true story of the country, it's really a story of a country that keeps trying to get better in spite of. And for me, that's a whole lot better than a myth that we want to create that basically says we got to vilify these people from the dark continent, quote unquote, and they show up here and we make them out to be this, that, and the other, and we continue that lie, we continue that narrative. What did Baldwin say? The whole 3/5 compromise where we were seen as less than human continues to haunt us to this day. That birth defect. But that birth defect is making the whole body politic sick. And so those who want to change the narrative of what really happened, it's like, okay, you've been diagnosed with the disease, so let's just deny it. And eat candy. And as we eat candy and deny the disease, then tell me what that's going to do for you.
Right. You mentioned Jesse Jackson. How did that come about? Obviously, God ordained those steps.
Yeah.
But how do you get to a point, you know, you're pastoring the church here, and of course everyone sees your advocacy around the world at this point. What was it like getting that call that this is where you're being called to for Rainbow Push?
It's been crazy. It was crazy. Full story, Reverend Jackson what I did not know, his family, close friends, about 10 years ago started checking me out. And they were having conversations about me, and I did not know it. I spoke at a conference for him in 17 or 18 in Atlanta, and someone just told me about 3 months ago, while I was speaking, he said, he and Reverend Jackson were standing, applauding. Reverend Jackson leans over and says, what do you think about Freddie as our next president? And again, all this talk is going on. I know nothing about it. And then in 2019, at the NAACP convention in Detroit, I'm on to speak. I speak, Reverend Jackson is there, and he finally says it to me. He says, I want you to succeed me as president of Rainbow Push. So I said, man, quit playing. This ain't April 1st, so it ain't April Fool's, quit playing. And so he said, I'm very serious. He said, it's time for you to do this. And so I said, no, I got a job, I'm good. And so he, from that day, put on a full court press, and he'd hear about me speaking here. He said, I just heard about you speaking. Imagine if you had the Rainbow Push platform as they introduced you. As I said, sounds good, but you're the president of Rainbow Push. I'm with that. He said, no, I'm serious. I want you to do this, and you can, hold on to your church because your church is down with you, and you can keep doing this work. And then COVID hit, and that stopped him from calling me so much, because he was literally calling me every single day. Because when he wants something, he goes after it, So COVID hit, he stopped calling me every single day, and but then every now and then he'd call me. He said, we're waiting on you. I said, keep waiting. And then April of last year, he called, and this time he had some other people on the call, and he said, you won't listen to me, but I have witnesses now. I need you to succeed me as president of Rainbow Push. I said, you're serious? He said, I've been serious for 10 years. Yeah. And so I said, and this happened, I said, can I call you back?
You said, can I call you back? Right. With all these people on the phone?
Right. I said, can I call you back? And I just started walking around because, and I don't know why you keep bringing these tears out of me, but as I'm walking around, I have a flashback because it's almost full circle. I told you about my high school experience. My pastor, after my dad passed away, Dr. Amos Brown, comes to the church, and the public school system in San Francisco was not being culturally responsive. And so we did a series of meetings trying to change curriculum and all that stuff. And he invites me to be a part of, what's happening. He was a protege of Dr. King. And finally, they're not responding. So we call a one-day boycott of the San Francisco Unified School District. Why? Because they get money from the state based on classroom attendance. So we're going to hit them in the pocketbook. So we called the boycott, and instead of going to school, we went to church for school. And we set up church, all the black churches in San Francisco that day held class for students who did not go to our respective schools. Very powerful day. So that night we have a mass meeting like they did during the Civil Rights Movement. And I walked in, and Dr. Brown saw me. Here comes one of our student leaders, Frederick Haynes. Come on down here and speak. Speak. And so I said, okay. So I go down. I'm in Miss Davis's class, Afro-American Literature. We had just read the autobiography of Malcolm X. There's a scene in the book where Malcolm's dad has been killed, probably by the Klan, and the family is being economically dismantled. And the food in the fridge, the food in the pantry is drying up, and there's nothing left. And so Malcolm goes to his mother and says, I want some food. And she says, well, I don't have any. And he keeps on pressing. And so she reaches from behind a cupboard, here, take this, begrudgingly. And then she says to Malcolm, why can't you be quiet, silent, like your little brother? And Malcolm looked at his brother, who was going hungry, looked at the food he had, and he reached a conclusion. This is in the autobiography of Malcolm X written by Alex Haley. He said he looked at his brother, looked at himself, and he said his brother was quiet, like his mama wanted, and he went hungry. He said, I made noise and got what I wanted. I learned that day, if you're gonna get what you want, you gotta make noise. Back to your living out loud. So Tashara, I had just read that. So Reverend Brown calls me down to speak. I don't know what I'm gonna say, but that hits me. And I tell that story. I'm 16 years old. I tell the story of Malcolm X. I said, today we made some noise. We made noise in San Francisco. Imagine a 16-year-old kid doing that. That crowd went crazy. The crowd was just, and I said, whoa, look at you, Freddie Haynes, look at you. And so that moment was one of those defining moments where I felt like, maybe this is what God is calling me to do. Fight for civil rights, fight for justice, use my skills of oratory as a voice for those who don't have a voice. Because afterwards, like all my peers were running up to me like, just giving me love, like, I couldn't have done that. How'd you do that? And I felt God saying, I gave you the gift to do that. So when Reverend Jackson calls me with the witnesses, when I hung up, I flashed back to that moment. And I'm like, is this what this was leading to? God, is this what you're saying? And so I called him back and I said, okay, let me continue praying about this. He said, I've already prayed. I said, well, I still got to talk to God myself. This can't be a, two-way thing. This is a three-way conversation now. And so the witnesses on the line, they said, well, we prayed about it too. And so I said, I feel like y'all are ganging up on me with prayer, and that ain't biblical. I ain't seen ganging up on somebody with prayer. I said, we're going to pray together in this thing. And so I just got to say, number one, Jesse Jackson came to Bishop College when I was a student, and I was mesmerized. I'm like, Jesse Jackson, wow. And I got to hang with him that day. And he mesmerized the student body with his speech. And that was the beginning of me running into him. And then 84, 88, he comes through Dallas during his presidential campaigns. And, I'm right there admiring this man, And then he's showing me that ministry should never just be confined to a sanctuary. It's got to get out where the people are in the streets and give a voice to those who don't have a voice. He's showing me that. And then he called me to ask me to succeed him. There's one of my favorite Bible passages is, now unto God who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above anything I can ask or imagine. That was that moment. It was a beyond anything. I wasn't asking for it, and I thought I had a great imagination. I sure didn't imagine that.
One word to describe what it means for you to be at the helm of leading that organization.
One word. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Come on.
I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. That's the word, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Family. Mentioned your daughter a couple of times. I've met your wife.
Right.
Talk about family and how your family has been so supportive in all that you've been doing, because you wouldn't be able to keep going without their support behind you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm richly blessed. I'm just richly blessed. I have an amazing mother, because I got to bring her in. I should sorority sister too. Y'all deltas or something else. My mother is, I mean, she prays for me relentlessly, and I don't care if she hears me speak someplace. I mean, she's gonna always, it's just, son, that was so amazing. That was, I mean, you would just think I am it, you know. She was there at the MLK piece, and she came up to me, oh son, I've just never heard you like that. That's all the time, you know. And so, but that feeds me and blesses me, so I start with her, because she gifted me. I feel I've been gifted with a great mother, gifted with a wonderful wife. My wife also is not just a supporter, but she's also one who will say, okay, I see something you don't see, and I need you to think about this. I see something behind your back. You can't turn around and see what's behind your back. I see it. And I want you to know it's there, and you can trust me, because I don't want anything from you. I'm already here. And so I'm not trying to hold you down. I'm not trying to keep you back. I'm trying to push you forward, and I see some stuff going on. Now, again, she'll give me the good, but she's also honest with me. And the honesty is fueled by love. I have no doubt about that. And then I have, as far as I'm concerned, the GOAT of daughters. My daughter is, I mean, Kobe Bryant came up with girl dad. I mean, I'm that. Yeah. And she says she's a daddy's girl. We are like that. And so that's my girl. She's super smart, super conscious. It's real funny. She's been the whole piece that's going on in Gaza. She's very upset about what's happening there. And if she doesn't feel I'm doing enough, I mean, she will, Daddy, you ain't doing enough. I said, what you doing? You know, you just pushing me on out here to do stuff. What you gonna do? And so, but she is, you talk about a justice warrior and an advocate. I'm so blessed to have a daughter who, I often hear my mini me, you know, and so I said, well, I can't have a mini me because, you know, I don't have a son. And
she's still your mini me. She's still your mini me.
And that's what she says. That's exactly what she says. She says, I'm your mini me. And, you know, I've been blessed. Okay. I've been richly blessed.
Anything else you feel like people miss about Pastor Haynes? We know all of what we see outside, right, outwardly, but is there anything people miss about you from the inside out?
Well, the big part for me is what you just said. I love how you phrase that, from the inside out. I try to live life from the inside out. I try to live life with a strong sense. Howard Thurman has a chapter in one of my favorite books, Meditations of the Heart, entitled Living the Outer Life from Your Inward Sanctuary. I'm not doing anything externally. I try not to do anything externally that has not been at first the result of a centering, a connection with a higher power that sent me here, with a belief that I want to be like Jesus, and if I can be like him, and so there's that constant striving in my centering moments to make sure I get it right. Yeah. I don't always get it right. I wish I did. I blow it, but I know one thing, I'm trying to get it right. And what happens in the process is that I'm centered and I feel like I'm hearing from God, and then God is good enough to put the right people in my life at the right time who either say the right thing, they do the right thing, but somehow, some way, it lets me know you're on the right path, or you may need to course correct. Mm-hmm. And but that comes from a centering. It's not, if I'd much rather do some other stuff that is fun and makes more money, so I could just live life, but that's not what I'm called to do. This is my assignment, and I've got to be faithful to my assignment. And that's my greatest desire, that God can say, you were faithful to what I called you to do.